This is a multiple stage setup here, so bear with me here. In dependencies, we're going to use a determination to understand that one value or the value of one attribute makes it possible to actually determine the value of another. Why this is important? Because it actually establishes that we might have a key or keys, attributes that make up a key in the table. And this is within the actual table itself, not between tables. So you're going to see one single table with all this. In our functional dependence, we are going to talk about this because, again, in our overall design, you'll see this come up today. You'll see this come up in your ER diagrams. And again, to kind of identify, hey, these values are dependent on another. So what I'm trying to do is, if I give you the determinant, that's the terminology for this, can you tell me for certain what the dependent is? The determinant is going to be attribute values whose value determines another, and your dependent is the attribute whose value is determined by the other attribute. The notational form is going to be this. It's going to be the determinant gives us, guarantees us, you should say for certain, you're going to see me say use for certain a lot, the dependent. So let me get to an exercise or example. So let's take a look at our table before we get into everything that we've got here. In our table, you know what? You should have done this as an exercise already. You know what? But notice, instantly my thought was, let me look at the darn table. Let me start figuring out what's going on with the table. And if I didn't have you go through that exercise, see, my mentality already is trying to figure out how are all of these attributes related. So you and I are naturally going to try to actually do this type of setup, is figure out, okay, what item is going to be the most important item or items in order to uniquely identify items that we have, other items that we have in this database, or excuse me, table in this particular aspect. All right, so setup number one. So if I gave you the student number, for certain would you be able to get the student last name? So again, if I give you the student number, can you tell me for certain what the student last name is? Just to read off here. So an example, if I gave you the student number of 324269, could I really get you the student last name for certain? So if we were to go in there, and I'm going to let the magic of editing do this for me, for certain, because there's only one match, and that's the key ingredient here. There's only one match. We get Obolensky. Actually, I had a friend of mine, his last name was that. That's why I picked that one. Setup number two. If I were to give you the Professor Num, can you tell me for certain what the student last name is? So if I gave you Professor 222, can I get the student last name for certain? And the answer is nope. I can't do that because, as you know, professors are going to have multiple students, and they may have multiple students with the same last name. Again, I had 2 Brian Williams. That's not going to work out. So notice that's not going to be a functional dependency. I would need more info on that. So again, notice I'm not giving you all correct answers here. Step number 3. Careful. If I were to give you the last name, the student's first name, and their student date of birth, would I for certain be able to give you the GPA of that particular student? Now, the answer to this one is, notice I said even in the table that I have and in probability, the answer is going to be yes. A student with the last name, first name, and the same date of birth as somebody else and get a GPA, that's pretty unique. That's pretty unique. So the book is the author is rather comfortable with it, and to be honest with you, so am I, because of realistic stuff that we've done before, not educational, okay? But there could be some lawyer that's in the class, you know how we have a couple of students like that said, oh, geez, you know, we should probably use one more thing. And I get that. I respect that. But In reality, with applications, the chances of those three things happening with two of them, it's tough. It's tough, let's put it that way. But I'll respect it, and you're going to have to come up with something else in order to do that. All right. So if I did John Smith, November 30th of 1996, could I get the GPA? For certain, it would be 2.92. For certain, and yeah, there's a little wiggle room, okay? Now, would I be able to do the exact same thing with, this time, just the last name and then the first name for a student and get their GPA? For certain, what would that answer be? The honestly was John Smith. I think John Smith is in there twice. Yes, it's being highlighted right now. I couldn't do it. That John Smith is, well, just like my Brian Williams example. Not going to happen. So notice just adding one item in there, student date of birth, would be a great idea. Now, you're probably going to tell me, hey, you should have used ID. Now, at some universities, we're really good about our UIN or ID or something like that. But you know what? When you go to a store or something like that, do you always remember your ID number? No. Do you remember your credit card number? No. So in most cases, you're really not going to know your ID number. But you're going to remember your first name, your last name, and date of birth. At least I hope so, until you get to my age. So that's why we have this set up when it comes with dependencies. This is telling you what are the important attributes that can help make up keys and identify for certain a response from that dependency, determinant, and dependency. That's how this is going to be set up. So what you and I did was actually the next step up when it comes to dependencies is a full functional dependence, which means an entire collection of attributes really help determine a single result. And that determinant is necessary for the entire relationship. So in this example, again, my first part is the determinant, my second part is the dependent. I needed all three of those in order to get the student GPA. Now, by the way, is this the only full functional dependence in this table? No. No, it's not. I bet you can find a few others. So again, notice I haven't even used the key yet, which we've already identified as student number. Yes, that's the dead giveaway. I'm trying to show you something that may not be the dead giveaway, okay? If I were to take one of these out, notice it goes to hell in a handbasket. So there's your full functional dependencies. I need all of these, if not a little more, in order to get my certain response. Again, this is not the only one that's really in the database. The key is one, and there might be another one that's in there as well. So use that knowledge to make sure that you understand the dependencies that are just inside the table when you do that design.